So I think we can agree that yesterday's Vancouver Canucks versus Boston Bruins game was a disaster. Definitely not the highlight reel performance that we have been used to seeing out of this Canucks team in 2023-2024. And when it comes to the way some of these players have been progressing, let's just say 5v5, maybe even on the power play. Look, the power play sucked yesterday. 2 shorthanded goals against, you've got turnovers galore. It hasn't been great. And when it comes to the way you can talk about some of these assets, there are some extra updates and conversations that have been brought upon us from different sources, like the Canucks themselves, like Pierre LeBrun on TSN, mostly in regards to the newest Vancouver Canuck, Elias Lindholm. So, this is going to be a video about Lindholm. We're also talking about Pettersson because there are some interesting things to bring up in regards to him. But we're opening this conversation up with the entire idea of the Canucks acquiring Lindholm in the first place. This is a tweet made by Buck Foston, so very appropriate username for this day and age, talking about a Pierre LeBrun hit from 2 days ago. My understanding is that the Vancouver Canucks actually had interest in trading for Lindholm last summer. So this was someone that they had hoped to make a part of their plan. And what's fascinating to me about this is that who knew the Canucks would be this good? This is a player they thought about for a long time. I think the idea of Lindholm being a Pettersson insurance policy has to be a part of their calculation. Now, you could very much debate the idea of whether or not Elias Lindholm's acquisition makes it easier for the Vancouver Canucks to re-sign Pettersson, or it acts as insurance because, hey, if you don't sign Pettersson, then you can use some of that money to get Lindholm. They're not really in the same caliber player. I think Lindholm is a much more defensively reliable two-way presence rather than the high-flying offensive dynamo that Pettersson could be. If you're saying, okay, if we lose out on Pettersson, we can just keep Lindholm, sure, that's a fine way to allocate your money, but is Lindholm really filling up the role that a Pettersson leaves behind? I don't know if he's capable of doing that to Pettersson's full capacity. Either way, Pierre LeBrun is indicating the idea that, hey, the Canucks probably are thinking about this, at the very least, if there is some sort of an Elias Pettersson departure from the team sometime in the offseason. So it is interesting how the Canucks were going after Lindholm for all this time, how they wanted to go after him earlier in the summer, but after being as good as they have been this season, then they're like, okay, let's pull the trigger now. Let's do this now. Kuzmenko is a cap dump, and every other prospect and pick can get added on afterwards. Very interesting turn of events, if I do say so myself. Here's another tweet made by Buck Foston, also talking about LeBrun comments. He also thinks that the Canucks could go to both Pettersson and Lindholm and say, we have a cup contender here. You take a little less, don't go to the UFA market, and we make it all work together. He thinks this entire situation could give the Canucks a bit of leverage over Pettersson. So, would it not be kind of poetic to see this go down the way it has, where an acquisition like Lindholm not only acts as insurance for Pettersson, but it actually acts as a mutual benefit for both players? Hey, we've got Lindholm and Petey together, why not just convince both of them to re-sign by promising that the other guy is going to re-sign? Let's build something together here in Vancouver. Take a little bit less, don't go $12 million on us, Petey, don't go $9 million on us, Lindholm. Just take a little bit more of a reasonable cap hit, and maybe we'll work it out. I do like that LeBrun thinks that this is a possibility because, of course, it's better hearing it than not. And he also goes out there and says this, at the end of the day, a lot of people are presuming that Lindholm might stay. Don't presume. He might, but he was offered a deal in Calgary in the range of $8 million at some point, and he stayed resolute that he is a UFA on July 1st. Pierre LeBrun thinks this is more a situation where Lindholm is going to Vancouver with an open mind. See how he fits, see how the playoff run goes. I don't think there's a chance that we see an extension at the end of the season. I think this is more of an off-season discussion. And that's a very intriguing part about this conversation, that the dollar amount that he rejected was $8 million. Let's say, for all intents and purposes, Lindholm does fantastically well with the Canucks. He's at 2 points right now in 2 games played because, of course, he had 2 goals in the first game. So right now, his point production is at 1 point a game. Let's say he continues doing that, maybe even gets a little bit higher as the year goes on. Let's say Lindholm finishes off his Canucks stint in 23-24 with, I don't know, 35 points in 33 games. That's reasonable enough for a guy who's playing first power play with these top guys, right? If he is that good, and he still wants that $8+ million mark, Would it be easy for Vancouver to go out there and use some of the other contracts as leverage? This is a reply from Mustard Sports that makes a lot of sense to me. If it gets to that point, wouldn't you already say that JT Miller set the internal cap for players that age? The difference is that Miller is goated offensively, so there's no way I sign Lindholm to a retirement deal that pays him more than Miller. At the end of the day, JT's on pace for like 110 points this season. He's been very good. So this is a player who, setting the internal cap within the team, may come in as leverage. And we know that the internal cap is going to get broken by Pettersson because he's going to get something in the $10+ million range. You could debate whether or not that's really worth it, but Petey's going to break it. It's going to be tough to say that Elias Lindholm should be making more than Miller, though. That's another caveat. Now, when it comes to that same Lindholm, there have been a few conversations as to the new developments in terms of where he's going to be in the lineup. This is a tweet made by Jeff Patterson from earlier today. It's been a really tough 9-game stretch for Elias Pettersson at 5v5. The addition of Elias Lindholm has to help. And included is a screenshot of Elias Pettersson getting 0 goals, 0 assists, and 0 points in 119 minutes at 5-on-5 in 9 games played. Now, whether or not Pettersson gets help from Lindholm to improve his production at 5v5, that doesn't seem like an option that's going to be readily available at the moment, considering the fact that you had yourselves, the Canucks, change things up at practice a little bit. It seems more so like, from everything that's happened today, Elias Pettersson may actually not be playing with Lindholm. Here's the video that the Canucks posted on their Twitter earlier today, and it goes out there with some really interesting combinations of players wearing different jerseys. Now, Cody Severson went out there and inferred a lot of the information based off of what we saw in the video, but based off of the names, you've got Miller, Lindholm, Åman, PDG, Lafferty, and Boeser all suiting up for white, and on blue, you've got Garland, Pettersson, Bluger, and Höglander. Not seen are Joshua Mikheyev or Pia Sutar. The new lines, according to Cody, based off of these guesses, are Lindholm, Miller, Boeser, Mikheyev, Pettersson, Höglander, Garland, Bluger, Joshua, Åman, Lafferty, Suter, with Phil DiGiuseppe as the extra. So, because all 3 of these guys were confirmed to be wearing the same color jersey, Miller, Boeser, and Lindholm, it's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic works itself out on the ice. I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch most of the Boston game yesterday, so I personally didn't see if there was a Lindholm, Miller, Boeser combination at any point at 5v5 in that Boston game, but considering the fact that nobody got any goals, it's probably fair to assume that everything was just off. So for this entire lineup heading into the Detroit Red Wings game later this weekend, it's going to be noteworthy to see how well this new Lindholm line meshes with Boeser and Miller. Boeser and Miller are better players together, I feel, this season than Pettersson and Mikheyev have been. Pettersson and Mikheyev, that duo has just been very off and not really the most offensively productive. Meanwhile, Miller and Boeser seem to be getting goals quite often throughout the year. So if Lindholm is an extra guy who can add some 5v5 offense to that line, then that's going to be pretty interesting. As well, though, we have to see how Pettersson plays with his new line mates, whether that's Höglander and Mikheyev or anybody else. But for now, these are our updates from Pierre LeBrun talking about how the Canucks really wanted to get Lindholm and how they may be using this as insurance to re-sign Pettersson. Also, this is a conversation as well regarding the new lines heading into the next few games. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this new line of Lindholm, Miller, Boeser? How do you feel about the Canucks' desire to get Lindholm that extended as far back into last summer? What are your thoughts on the idea of the Canucks re-signing both Lindholm and Pettersson? And how do you think this is going to go, considering Lindholm already turned down an $8 million deal with the Calgary Flames? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.